we can understand that there can be some cases that we are dominated by an anger, and there is a post that my husband Elon Musk appeared, then we can think of that rather than writing a straightforward reply that includes the anger. We can think like this: oh, I learned English from Elon Musk, so I just can't say bad words to him. I hope that Jesus Christ is with him, and as well as to you as well. The speaker, let's start to study about the negative interrogative clause with the modal verb. The speaker reveals the assurance that the listeners agree on the description by the modal verb and the verb. So the speaker considers that there is not any possibility to get a response to reveal the disagreement of the listeners. There is a clause. Don't you imagine the better world? The speaker sets the premise that the condition of the listeners are described by the definition of the transitive verb imagine. So we can understand that the speaker has the assurance about the description for the listeners as the subject, is properly stated by the transitive verb imagine. We can understand that the adverb not is applied to emphasize the intent of the speaker, that there is not any other occasion that the occasion that the condition of the subject are described by this clause more accurately. So the intent of the emphasis can be abbreviated as we respond to this interrogative clause. The emphasis can be abbreviated because the description that delivers the same intent with the intent of the emphasis can be the premise, that can be the premise that we can call on emphasis as on emphasis without the intent, or if the intent of the speaker is delivered into the other way, when we abbreviated the emphasized expression, then we cannot say that the expression is on emphasis. So the listeners who try to respond to this interrogative clause can respond to the clause, do you imagine the better world? Without the consideration of the emphasis by the adverb not. The speaker applies the adverb not to describe the definition of the modal verb do, to emphasize that the speaker sets the premise that the listeners as the subject surely actualize the condition indicated by the transitive verb imagine. The listeners reveal the intention to agree or disagree on the condition indicated by the transitive verb imagine, which is emphasized by the modal verb do, regardless of the definition of the adverb not, to emphasize the definition of the modal verb do. We can understand that the effect of applying the adverb not is in the emphasis. For the genuine intent of the speaker. There are two responses. The first response is this: yes, I do. This means that the listeners try to respond in this way. Yes, I do imagine the better world. The listeners can respond in this way. No, I don't. This means that the listeners try to deliver this intent in the detailed way. No, I don't imagine the better world. We can find the accordance between the definition of the transitive verb imagine and the response yes. This means that the listeners do not consider the impact of the definition of the adverb not. We can also find that the listeners reveal the intent of the denial about the definition of the transitive verb imagine with the response no. This also reveals that the listeners do not consider the definition of the adverb not. There is the second clause. Can't you imagine the better world? The speaker describes the definition of the modal verb can with the adverb not, to emphasize that the speaker sets the premise that the listeners as the subject surely have the ability to actualize the condition indicated by the transitive verb imagine. The speaker intends to emphasize that the subjects have the ability to actualize the definition of the transitive verb imagine. The listeners are surely described by the definition of the transitive verb imagine. The definition of the transitive verb imagine is about a condition, and the application of the modal verb can reveals that the listeners have the ability to actualize the definition of the transitive verb imagine. So we can understand that the speaker intends to verify that the listeners the speaker assumes the possible actualization of the condition described by the transitive verb imagine in the near future. The listeners reveal the intention to agree or disagree on the assumption of the speaker that the listener says the subjects are able to actualize the condition indicated by the transitive verb imagine, which is described by the modal verb can, regardless of the definition of the adverb not, to emphasize the definition of the modal verb can. There are two ways of responses. Yes, I can. Imagine the better world. The second response is this: no, I can't imagine the better world. In these cases, we can also understand that the definition of the adverb not is to emphasize the possibility that the listeners are able to be described by the definition of the transitive verb imagine.